This is the Real Friends Podcast. It is a beautiful day on the Real Friends Podcast, and that is because 35 years ago this year, one of our cherished childhood movies came out, which I did not realize until this year came out before I was born. So it's a nice.
Yeah, it was the same for me.
But you're probably hearing a new voice, so go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
I appreciate it. Well, I am Christopher, not Nolan, because I am not the acclaimed filmmaker of today's generation, of where I am not the one behind Inception, Interstellar, Oppenheimer, and the upcoming The Odyssey, but I am a huge fan of his work, hence the name of not Nolan. So I'm not trying to do identity thieves anywhere near here. And I am a very much an avid cinephile. I've been watching movies since I was a kid. I have my own podcast that you can be listened to on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. And you can also look at my YouTube channel with Christopher Now Nolan, where it's called Frame by Frame, because that's literally what I do from the beginning to the end of my episodes, where I go for the technical portions, the cultural impact, in-depth conversations, and see what other perspectives that everybody else has from movies from back then to current movies, where the filmmaking industry is at now, and much more. And that's usually what I do for my podcast. And that's for I movies have shaped the way I am as a person. So I'm glad to be on here as a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we didn't give it away already, right? We're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the
Uh,
1990, comic book film phenomenon, right? That has probably shaped most of my personality, and I'm guessing yours as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the fact that because I didn't get a chance to watch it at all when I was a kid.
Hmm.
So that's where a few days ago, when I had recently watched it with a very close friend of mine who is also an avid cinephile in his own way, and he's a huge Ninja Turtle fan. We when we got the chance to watch it in the movie theater, we kind of time traveled. We put our phones away, looked at the film, and then it was like the inner child of us was just our childhood was redeemed, and it was an adrenaline rush.
They just announced too they're bringing the second one back next year for its 35th anniversary.
Oh, he and I already made plans. We are gonna go watch it again, reevaluate, and then just see what we like about it, what we don't like about it. And definitely the Ninja Turtles it did shape my personality to where my avid love for pizza. So obviously it's like right here with Pizza Hut instead of Domino's, but hey, it was just that time. And then just staying in touch with my youthful side. Ninja Turtles definitely did have a part of that. It was also about there was a lot of more things that did shape my personality, but we'll dive into that later.
Sure. Yeah, I saw the Domino's when I was watching it. I was like, "Oh, I could go for that." And then I made a frozen pizza. And then I saw Burger King cup and like a Whopper container as well that the Foot Clan had. And I was like, "Oh, perfect. We could get Burger King too." So
That is crazy to hear. That's because literally when my friend and I before we went to go watch it, we went to McDonald's and it was Hello Kitty and Ninja Turtles made a
yeah.
combination. And that was the first time for me to actually hear about it. So he buys it, I look at it, and I'm like, wait, what is this? And he's like,
Yeah.
it's a goofy ass turtle.
It's weird looking. Yeah.
I'm glad that we just kept it the way it is. But that combination, it also shows how long lasting the Ninja Turtles has been, not just from the animation, but just from this particular film in general.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we talk about this movie, right? Came out in 1990. This was, I believe, the first VHS tape I ever had. I had this and I had Secret of the Ooze, and I still have them somewhere.
Wow. I
Yeah.
don't even have mine, but I remember obsessively rewatching the Ninja Turtles at that time as a kid and just thinking like, oh, this is one of the best things to have ever happened. And just by the fact that just by looking at it now from a childhood standpoint, there was a lot of things that I overlooked. But
Yeah, that's actually an important thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about if this movie held up or not. right. Because that was my big question coming into it. And I watched it the other day and I watched it again this morning and I was like, did it hold up? And I want to, kind of get into that as we go. But
I definitely think, from my perspective, it definitely did held up because I mean, when you look at the first of all, when you look at the facts, it was an independent film at that time, and it was the highest grossing independent film at that time. And then the fact that it made over $200 million in the box office with only a $13 million budget, it shows that people followed through on it at least at that point. And then now, generations later, there are numerous people that are still coming back to it, even noticing the fact that you could tell that it was an independent film and not backed by major corporations. And New Line Cinema was definitely different at that time.
yeah.
So knowing all of that, and but it's still having that long-lasting impact to this day, oh, it still stands up to par, at least in my personal opinion.
Yeah. And I don't think, I mean, next year we can talk about Secret of the Ooze because I might have that one a little bit higher than this one, right? I think I might like it a little bit better, just because Rocksteady and Bebop are there. Like I
Uh,
love this too. But
See, see, I do have my opinion on that, I do have my opinion on it, but I do have that on my podcast of this movie and of Secret of the Ooze. So
sure,
for those that want to listen to it, I could send the links, and then I could show up the links, and then that way they could be able to tune it for themselves, and then I could rewatch it again, reevaluate it, and then see if my opinions have changed.
sure. Those two movies existed back then, and then we really haven't had a rival to them. Like the ones with Johnny Knoxville, made by Michael Bay, were okay, right? Like it's weird that a movie that only cost 13 million, like you said, that came out in 1990, is probably the best representation we've had of the Turtles. We've had good animated versions, right? The TV show was good. Seth Rogen's movie last year was good, but like
Mhm.
this is kind of the cream of the crop for that, and for it to be the first swing is pretty impressive.
It's definitely long standing because you don't really see that in a lot of the franchises, to where the first film is very, like, we got a lot of films in other franchises that are definitely top tier. Like there are some where sequels sometimes
Right.
surpass it. There are some times where, okay, the other effects are better, but what is it about this first film that still resonates with fans and for those that are fresh and new with the Ninja Turtle universe? And with this one, it's more of where we definitely see plenty of action. We definitely don't see any CGI at that point because
None.
this is also something that we have to think about. At this point, it was a lot of practical effects that were being used. So there was a lot of stunts having to be used. People had to be experienced with it. And then around the late 90s to borderline 2000 is where screen CGI was barely being introduced, but we didn't get a Ninja Turtles to go with that flow. We had other franchises that rode that wave and just ran it with us. So the fact that with this movie in particular, we definitely see the hair and the makeup, the costumes, the screenwriting in of itself. It's definitely prevalent of that time, and it shows that, oh, you could definitely tell that's 90s. Where I mean, we could definitely go into it more with, like, Danny, the character Danny, for instance, and he puts on his headphones, and then
Yep.
the dad's like, okay, look, he sticks his head into those things, and I'm like, wow, how much time has passed since
Yeah.
then.
Well, and he's like, how could he even afford those? And now you can get headphones for 99 cents at Walmart. Like
Exactly. And then he had a CD, and then a CD player. I grew up with a CD player. I grew up with all of that. And then to look back on it now, just by that technical standpoint, it's just fascinating to me of how 35 years later, where where the film industry, where technology, the impact, where certain things have just transpired since then. It's just fascinating to me.
Well, and that's my first huge note when I was rewatching the movie is that I know this movie came out in 1990, but this is one of the most 80s feeling movies I've ever watched.
Oh, absolutely. Just by just by the soundtrack itself,
Yep.
it definitely gives that 80s vibes because it was literally 90. So there at that time in 1990, people were still riding the wave of the 80s. And the 90s has not we're about to find out, okay, what's going to establish the 90s. So obviously the Ninja Turtles had to take some of their influence from the 80s TV show and then bring it into this very first live action adaptation to it, and then just see where it goes from there.
Yeah, and do you know, I didn't look it up. How soon after this came out did the animated show start?
I would say pretty soon,
I
actually.
would think, right?
Yeah, because the shows were definitely obviously different. And then
Yeah.
because it says here that we have the animated show, we have one that obviously was the 1987, and then we had let me see, I'm trying to see. There was another one that was from 1990 to 1996 on CBS.
That's the one I'm
So
thinking of. That's the one I'm thinking of. Yep.
yeah, so see that one was pretty long. No, it was not that long ago, but it also comes to show how at that time where we only had two films, then the TV shows, and then we didn't really have much to go on until the Michael Bay. So it really that's like what 20 like I would say like 22 years at that point because if I'm not oh no 24 years because the Michael Bay ones came out in 2014.
Yep. And it's, part of what made this movie and everything, like the Turtles, so long lasting for me, right, is as kids, right, we would go to Chuck E. Cheese. And they made
Mhm.
those side scroller games that now they brought back, like Mutant Mayhem, we were talking about. But that
Yes.
was for Ninja Turtles and for X-Men. They had incredible side scroller games that fed into the TV shows, and we've seen those TV shows now come back. Like X-Men 97 came back.
Absolutely.
Ninja Turtles got an animated movie. Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles, say what you want. They're literally just Transformers dressed like turtles, right? Like you could certainly remake the Ninja Turtles and it be good. I mean, Seth Rogen showed us you can do it, right? And
Mhm.
I think we could get another live action Turtles, and we will eventually, I'm sure. But
Well, the word on the street is that the last Ronin is being made, or is that it's
oh,
or
nice.
not being made, but it has been greenlit so far. And then we don't, and then right now they're just looking on developing the script, and then that way they can figure out okay later on who's gonna direct it, who's gonna be cast in it, and then that's gonna take the Ninja Turtles where we're asking for it back, but now we're gonna get a different part that a
Yeah,
lot of people don't know about, so it's fresh material. And it
I'm
also
hoping.
and have all of that start with this film, just with this first live action film. It's amazing.
I'm hoping it's rated R and we get like a Ninja Turtles Logan movie, right? Like they did with Wolverine. That would be sick.
You literally can't do a Last Ronin and not make it rated R. You literally
Right.
can't.
Just like Deadpool, right? Like it's in the same vein. Like it's not the comedy aspect, but like it's a brutal comic, you know? Like
For those that don't know about it, it for sure is. And then, but let's think about it. the the similarities that that movie would have with this movie is the dark tone
mhm.
that especially with okay, and then to segue back into this movie you see where the Ninja Turtles are being introduced and it's where April is being saved from the criminals, the teenage criminals, and how they do their thing, the lights go off, then they go back into the sewer, we see them in the shadow, and then just at that point the comic is still the humor is still there, we see that, but throughout the movie you see this dark tone, this realistic tone that is shown throughout, and it was seemed how it could have been like at the time supposedly it was a little bit controversial for being too dark for kids. What do you think about that?
It's interesting. I would call this movie absurd in that regard because it takes you down these paths of super dark things. And then you have Michelangelo and, Donatello arguing over like the pronunciation of a word, right? Like it felt like this very dark film that had little SNL skits built into it.
I could
Um,
see that.
yeah, which isn't a bad thing, right? But I can kind of understand like it being a little dark for kids. I mean, you have the grandfather basically, or the father, Splinter, like tied up the whole movie, right? And then he gets hit like defenseless. Oh my God, he's defenseless, right? So
Yes.
I don't know what the word I was trying to say is, but there's a good bit of dark stuff in here, but at the end of the day, it's still a kids movie, right? Like Neverending Story and Princess Bride had more dark than this movie, I think, and those are kids movies.
You see, the times have changed to where how kids' content is being viewed nowadays, to where it's being monitored, it's being parental advisory. Some are being banned even just because of what was allowed or what was not allowed. What was educated to us back then is more being hypersensitivity right now. And
Hmm.
at that time, where let's also think back to the world of what 1990 was like. There, technology did not take over. There was no social media at that point. All we had was media, and that was literally it. And it ties into that with this film, with April O'Neil being the reporter, and then with everything else that goes happen later with the environment of New York City, and seeing how seeing how all of that has happened is where it was a totally different world at that point. And parents knowing like what their kids are watching, what their kids are being exposed to. I mean, despite the fact that it was New York and there was obviously we're not going to get into it, but New York has a ugly history with it, with crime and all of that. But here is to where the Ninja Turtles are a representation of good guys fighting bad guys, and these
Right.
are criminals. And where, despite some of the cuss words that they said, despite the dark tone that was being used, and despite a one noticeable thing about the movie was Raphael and his inability to control his anger and that being exposed to children. There was a lot. There was a lot of controversy at that point of surrounding all of that. And honestly, when you think about it, this movie has some controversy for the Ninja Turtles using their weapons, and that's why you hardly saw them use their weapons in the sequel.
Yeah, that's fair. But you know, kids stuff, especially back then, had some darker things than they had messages about how to make it better. Think of Captain Planet and things like that, right? Like they would
Hmm.
present something and then they would show like, hey, here's how you can make it better. Magic School Bus, things like that. Specifically to I want to touch on what you talked about with Raphael not being able to control his anger. We have that
Hmm.
moment with Splinter explaining to him a really good message for people and especially kids like, hey, you don't have to fight this fight on your own, right? Like people are here to help you. So,
Absolutely. And that scene, it resonates more with me as an adult
sure.
because as a kid, when you lived through life enough with your roller coaster of emotions and experiences and with friendships, relationships, all of that, you start to feel more of the philosophies of what life has to offer you, the mantras and everything that is so self-reflective in order for you to grow and be your best self. And here we are with Raphael. We're seeing this as a kid, and we're seeing Raphael just being angry. And here is Splinter trying to find the medium for him to channel his anger in the way that he's supposed to instead of just lashing out. As a kid, when I watched it, I just found it moving to where, oh, this is a father, like a rat,
Sure.
it's a father, and just being comforting him. But now as an adult, seeing that, it just hits me more in my soul because I can see that care, that like the fact that he's not isolating himself, like he doesn't have to isolate himself. And then it also has a deeper meaning because when it comes to like teen suicide nowadays, like people feel like they feel like they're isolating themselves from their brothers, from their friendships, from their everybody else, and that's a dangerous road to lead. And it all starts with isolation, and it all starts with not having the people that you can comfort to, that you can rely on, that you can talk to. And then it leads, and that's something that I didn't catch when I was a kid.
Yeah. No, I feel you. And I mean, kids stuff does that a lot, right? Like unless it's baby shows that are just teaching a kid how to burp and things like that. Like a lot of
Hmm.
times, kids stuff has to put things in it to entertain adults, like because they're going to be the ones taking the kids to see it. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I think more than anything, I wouldn't call this a kids movie or an adult movie. This is a comic book movie. And comic book
Absolutely.
movies have always been made for both adults and children. So,
Absolutely. And then, also the fact that it deviates from at least elements of the TV show into this film to where, I mean, I watched it growing up and I honestly I still find it funny with the lines that they chose, the direction that they chose. And it didn't affect the dark tone didn't affect me at all. It actually out of all the films, this is actually my favorite. And
Okay.
it was because of the dark tone. It was the realism that they chose. And to be honest, kind of connecting back to where the controversy of the parents and their kids watching it. My parents allowed me to watch it. I turned out okay. So it
Yeah,
all comes
same.
so that's why to me it all comes down to the household and to what you take from it. And this movie, what I took from it as a kid was there is going to be situations down the line that you're going to have to face, that you're going to have to confront. But if it's worth it, if it's worth fighting for, if it's worth saving somebody else, if it's worth redeeming yourself, then it's worth it at the end. And the best thing about this movie was brotherhood. That was one of the core themes that I saw that I really loved.
Yep. I agree. I do think this movie didn't really give us a sense of Leonardo as the leader. I feel like we got that later. And this, he kind of felt like just one of the dudes, right? Like he was the one asking for pizza. He was the one, hanging out, doing the dancing. And like, you know, when I said this was absurd, there's one clear example of this that I thought of that you just talked about it. They go and save April, right? They come back, they order a pizza, and then Splinter is talking about to them about what they did, and he goes, "Let's meditate." Right? Then they start to
Yes.
meditate, and then immediately you hear Tequila start playing, and Michelangelo and Donatello are doing a dance. Like that's what I mean. It almost felt like an episode of Family Guy where it's like, here's your story, let's throw a couple skits in. And it's not a bad thing, but that's just it to me, that's what makes it a kids movie because we were talking about things, the kid wasn't paying attention, let's do something really funny to bring them back into it.
Well, also one of my favorite scenes behind, like before that scene, was when Splinter is giving this philosophical speech about you're near the end of your training. Here you go, and then Michelangelo's on the phone to be like, "I want no anchovies."
Yeah.
I was laughing in the theater, even though I knew that was coming, because that is me. Like a serious situation like that, I'm over here just being funny. If I'm hungry, I'm gonna want some pizza. So and then to fast forward to where okay, let's meditate, and then all of them are well, actually three of them are all dancing, just living life, not taking life seriously. And then Raphael goes to go see critters.
Yeah.
We obviously could tell that at this point of the introduction of the film, we started noticing a little bit of personality traits that seem to synchronize with every single one of them. With Michelangelo, we obviously see he's the youngest one, the most humorous of them all. Leonardo seems to give off that leadership energy, even though he didn't really establish himself as that. We can
Yeah.
kind of sense it because he's the first one to take initiative. He's the first one
Yeah.
to answer Splinter. What happened? Raphael is the one. Obviously, we see that he's the one that's the most angry. He's the most aggressive. And then we see that later on when he interacts with Casey Jones. And then Donatello, we see him to where he's in the middle. He's got the most intelligent. He's that geek and that nerd that is good to have around because you never know what knowledge that he could just spit out of nowhere. And I really liked how we all had those different personalities come into play here, and we see that resonate as the film goes on. It's definitely pretty fascinating in my opinion.
It is, yeah, and it's crazy like to think about how different they all are. Like that's always been one of my favorite things, and that's one of the cool things about the video games growing up. It was like, which one did you want to pick? And you didn't want to just pick them based on their weapon. Their weapon was a big deal, but you wanted to pick them based on what they could do. Like I had the old Game Boy game, and it was like going through the sewers, right? And you always picked
Mhm.
Michelangelo because you had the skateboard and the nunchucks, like
Yes.
yeah, Michelangelo is always a fan favorite, I feel like.
And I do have a fun fact to say about the weapons, but I'm gonna dive into that later. But to go with what you said, absolutely. I would play video games with them, and I would play video games regarding like them, and I would do different ones. I would do
Hmm.
Leonardo sometimes. I would mostly do Donatello. I always pick Michelangelo though. So I hardly chose Raphael. I because that's not the turtle that resonates with me the most. Like when it comes to that anger, that frustration, it just didn't resonate with me. Michelangelo's just the more humorous, as we see in the course of this movie.
Yeah.
And and then also and then of course, let's also talk about the most iconic line from this movie. Forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza. I'm gonna say that that because my love for pizza definitely came from the Ninja Turtles. They're the ones to blame for it. Like theirs is where Donatello's being a little serious. Michelangelo just got pizza on his mind, and then who knew that that quote would just live on 35 years later?
Yeah, it's definitely like I think you're a little bit younger than me, but like growing up in the late 90s, the Ninja Turtles and the Goofy movie are the two reasons to love pizza. With that cheese just seeping down that you can never replicate.
I
Yeah,
watched the Goofy movie and I was obsessed with it, so I will say that's also another part to blame. But Ninja Turtles, hands down, takes it.
yep, yep. I've seen TikToks recently of people trying to get a restaurant to recreate the Goofy movie pizza and they just can't do it. It's not
No, it
possible.
doesn't. No, it definitely doesn't. It definitely doesn't seem possible. So then, also, here's also another thing to talk about when it comes to the movie. The fact that in the later scene where Raphael is going to watch Critters, my friend and I were talking about how is it that nobody in this and nobody in New York, in New York City, no one can see that there's a big ass turtle just walking around and y'all don't even notice. Like his hat is not that big, and the guy, his feet is showing. Is nobody looking at his feet? Like is nobody looking at him directly? I know people in New York City they mind their own business, but come on now, like
Well,
y'all's eyes have to be working to know that's a turtle. That is a creature.
so there's two parts to that, right? The first one is in this movie specifically. They were aware of that, right? Because then they showed you that after his fight with Casey, he's chasing after him and he like jumps over that taxi. And the guy in the back is
Yes.
like, "What was that?" And the taxi driver goes, "It was a giant turtle in a trench coat." So you going to LaGuardia? Like they just it's New York City. They don't care, right? They're like whatever, that there's definitely giant rats walking around the subway. But the second part of it is to me, what it was a callback to, especially maybe not a callback, but a reference, the way
Hmm.
he was dressed is like Ben Grimm from the Fantastic Four. Anytime he disguised himself and went out in public, it was the trench coat, it was the hat, like that was always what they did, and that was starting back in the 1940s.
You know, I didn't actually catch that. That's a good eye because I didn't really think about it like that.
Sure. Yeah, I always associated the two because it's four people, it's a family, they're superheroes. They're just these guys are turtles and there's no girl, right? Like that's the big
Hmm.
difference. So,
And then also another thing that I talked about with my friend is that on the podcast, what he emphasized on the most was that in the beginning of the movie, you see that it's all about crime, and
mhm.
that's a real thing.
From
And this
from
is
the
supposed to
start.
be, oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the fact that it's like, so, like they would like the company of New Line Cinema and everybody there would probably say that they were targeting the youth and the kids. And yet here
Mhm.
you go, starting off with crime, and you see teenagers doing this crime on the streets unnoticed, or by the citizens of New York, they're unbothered. And we see like how this could have impacted kids to be like, oh, we're seeing teenagers doing this on the street, like just casually stealing someone else's wallet. It could have turned a whole other way. But
And
thankfully,
when you get
go.
to the Foot's warehouse, it looked badass, man. It looked like a great time for kids. Like they're like 12 smoking and playing pool and poker. Like, yeah, I can understand why parents were a little upset about that.
Yeah, there was yeah, like you could see at that time where at the time of like the 1990, the parents, the mindset of raising your kids was a whole different world. You just had to focus on certain other things, and now parents nowadays have to focus on other things on top of
Yeah.
all of that. So it's even a bigger burden. But back then, their burden was more of just exposing their kids to something that could be easily susceptible to them. And seeing that warehouse though as a kid, okay, I'll be honest. I definitely did want to partake in. Well, no, I didn't want to partake in the smoking, but
No.
what looked fun for me was the skateboarding, playing the video games, just being with the boys, and then just Like, and especially because I'm a night owl, so being out at night and then just being there safe, and then also the the self defense of like just trying to adapt yourself to fight. Okay, I like that part,
Yeah.
except for the use of the way that they were using it in the case of Shredder. Now, that's a whole other discussion to have. So, but yeah, I really did like that warehouse. That warehouse looked fun.
Yeah. This it's interesting how soon after like the Karate Kid movies this came out because Shredder's little dojo was very similar to Cobra Kai, right? So maybe they were hoping kids would associate the two with knowing they were the bad guys. I don't know, but it's interesting that this movie is not perfect, right? Like we can put that out there. It has its flaws, right? Um
Absolutely.
we have the storyline of trying to redeem Charles, I think it's Charles, April's boss, his kid, because his kid is a
Yes.
part of the Foot Clan, and then he tries to have his redemption arc. That's their way of trying to fix it. I don't think it does. Like, I don't,
Well,
it
there should have.
tries,
Well, we are going to acknowledge that the fact that no, this is not at least not a perfect film in general. But I will say that the creators and the director of this movie did say that they wouldn't change anything.
Oh, and I wouldn't either. It's a perfect Ninja Turtle movie. It's just not a perfect movie. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think there could have been more to add in terms of where Danny could have had a bigger wake up call for his redemption other than just talking to Splinter.
Right.
Like there could have been a more bigger effect for that, at least for that subplot.
Right.
But at least for what it did something, but there could have been a little bit more effort, at least in that storyline.
So I do this thing a lot when I do podcasts and I talk about what I would have changed. I would have just changed one little thing about it. I would have done that if something Danny did caused his dad to get hurt. And it was like a wake up call that, oh my gosh, like I can't, like because that would feed into, if you're trying to make this for kids, the idea of, hey, if you misbehave, something bad could happen to your parents, right?
I like that. Uh, okay, so a few things that I would change. Well, I would, like I said, I would change a few things about this movie. Not, I wouldn't omit anything because I felt like
Sure.
everything that was put in there, it served its purpose.
Yeah.
It wasn't slow. It brought the humor here. It brought the action here. Maybe what I would do is, like you said, I would definitely add something to where either Shredder or someone as a leader of the Foot Clan would kidnap his dad and then he would have to fight for it. I feel like that would definitely be like a good little part there.
Yep.
Another thing that I would probably enhance is more of the action scenes.
Sure.
So I would say like in the where like I say the action scenes in the antique shop, I wouldn't change anything about that. That seemed to be more, and in the apartment as well. Like they got to make do with what they got in that little space, which is you just got to adapt. You've got to be able, and especially because they're ninjas, they got to fight. They got to fight. But the what I feel like what they should have done was the rooftop scene towards the very end, where they would have. I felt like they should have gone a little bit longer
I agree.
and then they should have showed more scenes of all four turtles going for Shredder, and then really just really just going at it more.
I mean, I could be wrong, but like there's not hardly any of that. Yeah? Like they go to fight and then they see Splinter and he just goes after Splinter.
Yes, but when you look back at it, they just see that okay, they go one at a time and one at a time,
Right,
and
right.
then it cuts to where Casey and the rest of everybody else, and then they're just heavy and panting right after that, and we hear them in the background like doing the fight.
Yeah.
And what my friend noticed was that Michelangelo actually lasted the longest fighting Shredder than everybody else because for those that do not know about the universe is that Michelangelo is actually the strongest of the four. And we
Hmm.
get little bits and pieces here in this movie. And I felt like that should have been more amplified in this film, where we should have seen Michelangelo at least last longer because in that final action scene, we think Leonardo's the one because he's the one that landed a hit. But we also forget Raphael landed a hit with his kick. We forget that Michelangelo lasted the longest, and it kind of misdirects us as children for a little bit. And nothing too bad, obviously, but that's something I would have added. I would have added a little bit more action onto there.
Yep, I'm with you, and it's an important thing to say when you say you wouldn't omit anything. I think this movie's too short. I think if it has a shortcoming to take away the pun, like the movie's not long enough for what it's trying to do. And it as a kid, I thought it was a lot longer, and then I was watching it again, like I said today,
Mhm.
and 30 minutes in, Splinter gets kidnapped, and I was like, that felt like forever into the movie when I was younger. Like
Considering that the film is 93 minutes,
right.
when I was watching it in the movie theater, I was like, wait, that's it? It just either it just flowed smoothly and we were just in that universe that we just didn't notice how much time flew by, or it was just the way that they just unconsciously did it. But I
Yeah.
feel like maybe they could have added maybe 15 more minutes and that's
That's what
it.
I think. Yeah. Like a solid 105-minute movie would be good.
Ooh, and you know what? I just forgot something. Here is something that I definitely would change. So we know that for those that haven't even read the comics, did not see the TV shows, for those that are just freshly watching this movie, they can already tell that Splinter is the sensei. He is the fatherly guide for the Ninja Turtles. And so he has all of this knowledge. He got all of this from his former master, but yet we didn't really see him fight at all. We only just see him towards the end with Shredder, just with the nunchuck, one little move, and that is it. And growing up, my impression of that was where I thought it made Splinter look weak.
He's
And
yeah, the
that's
direct
something that I would have wanted to add something to where he really does fight, where he fights the Suns. And there could have been a fighting session there, and he could have been blindfolded, and then they all try to attack him, and then he could have just show them who's boss. And that is what the only main thing that I really like that Michael Bay did with those Ninja Turtle movies.
sure.
Showed off Splinter as the badass that he is, that they did not do with this movie and these two movies.
Yep. The character direction of him wasn't great, right? Like, and I think the reason for it was to make it more evident that he would get kidnapped easier, right? I feel like that's why they made him an ancient rat because, Splinter and other things is not, right? Like, he's more like Yoda in the prequels where he's older, but he can still, whoop that ass, right?
That's
Like,
what that was the impression that I kind of had wished for, because
yeah,
when the prequel trilogy of the Star Wars came out, Yoda was a prime example of someone that could be old but can still kick butt and not have age be an excuse. It's all about
right.
if you're still in tune with that self-defensive side of you that's ready to fight when it's ready to and just channel that energy to where it needs to. And Splinter should have had that. That was one of my
Yeah.
that was probably the biggest criticism that I had of this movie, to where how like it was so easy for them to just kidnap Splinter, and it was the Foot Clan, mind you, that got him, not even Shredder.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like they chose to make Yoda, or not Yoda, Splinter like Dagobah Yoda, right? From Empire Strikes Back, where he's ancient and can't really do anything. But even then, Yoda still could do a little bit, right? Like he picked Luke's starfighter up out of the water. Like he could still do something. So yeah, no, I'm with you. I wish Splinter had done something. Like he just felt like the spiritual guide, and even spiritual guides in movies like this, like Joseph Campbell would even say, they need to be able to do something. If they're not
Mhm.
going to be able to do something, they should be a spirit, not a person, you know?
Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's where, like, growing up, I really did like watching Splinter pass on his knowledge, and that's what I took from it. I took on the fact of being like a spiritual guide for those that are in my circle, passing on that knowledge, being reliable, being caring. I got that from Splinter. But what I got from the Ninja Turtles was like self-defense, knowing that you've got to fight back and then just not be afraid, while also maintaining that humor. And then when it came to Splinter, I really felt like that's where they could have put that emphasis on. Even though, yes, it was an independent film at that time, I'm sure that they could have found some way of that time to really give Splinter like a big final face off between him and Shredder.
Yeah, something, right? Not just like flipping him like he did. Like
Exactly.
let them
And then
fight for like 2 seconds or
it's
like
absolutely. And here's what they did right though. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is the introduction of Shredder. The bell ringing.
God.
Everybody's going over there. And then you just see the silhouette of his shadow just walking in. You hear the drums. Oh, I got chills as an
Goosebumps.
adult
Yeah.
watching this movie. As a
Yep.
kid, I was just like, as a kid, I was just wowed by it. But now, that's my favorite shot of that film. Just the
Yep.
fact where it's just hovering above. You see the shadow. He walks in, and if you notice, the shadow stops like right where the light is at. To me, that's volumes of oh, this is Shredder. This is someone who is obviously very skilled, very combative, someone you do not want to mess with.
Yep.
And that introduction itself for me spoke everything just by his glances. If he looks at you, it just ooh, the chills that I get. It's it's crazy. I really liked how they made Shredder in this film.
Yep. I agree. And then growing up and even now rewatching it, my favorite character is his head henchman. Like he's like evil Mr. Miyagi, and I love him.
What was it? What was his name again? Oh, he's the one I keep forgetting.
Is it Tatsu? Is it
Tatsu,
Tat?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. So Tatsu is definitely the one to where, like, he was definitely like that. He's always that side character that you just like doesn't do too much, doesn't do too little. But when he does understands the assignment, he comes in and cooks everybody.
Yep.
And I really did like that. And so I will say that later on when we re-review Secret of the Ooze, I will mention at that time and further emphasize that I didn't like how they just made him less hostile and just gave him like less talk, less lines. But
Which is weird
we'll
because he
talk.
already had hardly any lines. But yeah, we can
Yeah.
talk about
So
that next year.
yes, we'll talk about that more at that time. But I
Yeah.
really also another thing that I really liked about this movie was the humor. Just a little bit of where a Jose Canseco bat, Wayne
That
Gretzky was
I
mentioned.
died because as a kid I didn't realize what that was. Right now, like I mean, I went to college to work in baseball, right? Like so I'm obsessed with the MLB. When I heard Jose Canseco, like, did you pay money for this? Dude, I cackled. That was so funny.
As an adult, I did too. I didn't understand it when I was a kid,
Yeah.
but see, when I was a kid, I really liked playing hockey on the
Sure.
Nintendo 64. So I would always play as Wayne Gretzky. So when Michelangelo mentioned that, I really liked how he mentioned that, and it still resonates to this day. And
Yeah.
then the way to describe Shredder as what is that? I don't know, but it sure looks like it doesn't need to ask for a can opener.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the skitty part of it. Every time there's something going on, they just throw a funny line in. Like,
I that's what makes the Ninja Turtles. That's what makes them
hmm
different from a lot of others. And that's kind of when you kind of think about it, that's where Marvel went into. They're in
yep,
serious situations, but the tone is lighthearted and humorous, and yet and the Ninja Turtles all kind of deviates from that.
yep.
And then just like where all of that other humor to where obviously Michelangelo doesn't pay full price for late pizza. And oh wait, okay, so here's one thing. Here's something that I did not catch when I was a kid. So remember when they come back from their little sabbatical, they're going under the sewer, and then Casey Jones is with them. They're about to. It's a setup for the final battle, right?
Yep.
So Casey Jones doesn't want to sleep down there. Do you remember this scene where Donatello tells him, "You're claustrophobic," and then Casey
hmm
Jones says, "Like, you want a fist in the mouth? I've never even looked at another guy before." Let me tell you, the whole theater was laughing continuously at this scene, and as a kid, that went right over my
Yeah,
head.
way over. Yeah.
And then as an adult, my friend and I, we're just sitting there watching it, and we're like, "Oh, oh, he meant homophobic."
Yep.
I could,
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. Those are two completely different things.
As a kid, I wanted more Casey. Like when we were first introduced to him, I was like, dude, this guy's a badass. And then when the video game came out and you could play as Casey, I
Oh,
lost my mind. But
yes.
to me, he wasn't in this movie enough. Like even now,
No,
just because
he
I loved
absolutely
him.
he for sure was not. And that was actually part of the controversy at that time. They didn't some the parents did not really like Casey Jones, and that's why they omitted him because he was
Yeah.
too violent
Is
and the fact
he
that he was carrying weapons around everywhere. He
is
seemed
he
like
even
an
in the second movie? I don't think so.
no, he's not.
Yeah.
They omitted him because he was part of the controversy. He was part of the complaints. And that is what because when you look at it, parents are seeing this adult who is carrying around all of these weapons, walking around with the mask, and is just he has a cricket, he's got a hockey stick, which is what he's famously known for. He's got a bunch of other things, and here he's like careless and reckless, and he's kind of like Deadpool in a sense.
Sure.
He's not an anti-hero, he's not a villain, but he's also not a hero.
He's
He's
just a
more
vigilante. Yeah.
exactly. And at that time, there was only some complaints that about his character, what he was amplifying for kids. And
Sure.
and as a kid, I liked his character. I wish they had put him in the sequel. And that's where they replaced him with the pizza guy.
Yeah.
So I really wish that we should have had more Casey Jones as well. He was definitely a standout character in my opinion.
I really need to I might do that not today. I'm going to see a movie. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I need to revisit Secret of the Ooze because I'm looking at it on IMDb. They like recast like everyone. Like I completely forgot that Judith Hogue is her name, who
Yes.
was April in the first one. Yeah, like
Yes.
she was my childhood icon. She was in this and she was the mom in Halloween Town.
Absolutely. Same for
Yeah,
me.
and I
And
didn't realize because I haven't seen Secret of the Ooze since I was a kid. They recast
mhm.
April.
Yeah, it was mainly because when I did review this episode on my podcast and I was looking up all the facts, which I will be later on saying it for everybody. Judith Hogue did not show up to the sequel purposely because she was not for the violence that was displayed in this
Hmm.
film. And you know, growing up, like when I was looking at the film, I didn't see it like I mean, obviously, yes, there's combat and yeah, it could be deemed violent, but to me, I look at violence as more as where it's towards people that did not ask for it. It's for bullying. It is for those more serious scenarios where people are not asking for it. When it comes to this person versus this person, this group versus this group, which we've seen in Marvel, like DCU, and all these other franchises. It's like groups, like obviously enemies, heroes, and all of that. I don't see that as violent. I just see it as combative because that's self defense. That's where you're fighting for something that's good and trying to overcome the bad. And I mean, I could see her point though, to where she maybe wasn't for it, but when you look at the TV
Maybe.
shows, when you look at the comics, we see that she's very headstrong. Like this, her version of April, she's very headstrong. She's very blunt. She's very straightforward and stands her ground. And we definitely like that. But
Hmm.
I also, but we all, my friend said that the the way that April was drawn out initially, that was more in tune with the second actress's interpretation of April in Secret of the Ooze. And
Sure.
so I was like, okay, while both actresses did not do a bad job, I personally like Judith Hogue more in terms of the way in the way that she presented herself.
And
I
she
like hers.
and she looks like her, right? Like she looks like the April we know from the comics. Like,
Absolutely, yes. And she definitely was someone to where she even got the humor too.
yep.
Like before she was fighting the Foot Clan, and then she said something about her Sony payments was overdue. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I like that.
Yeah, that's funny. Like this
Yeah. So
I have I have a real issue with the idea if she didn't do this movie over the violence, because this is no more violent than Looney Tunes. This is no more violent than Power Rangers. All these things that are directly made for kids. I feel like that's a cop out for her. I feel like they didn't want her back for this movie. Is all I can think.
It could be possible, and then we're definitely not going to talk about Power Rangers right now because Power Rangers also got controversy for being too violent for kids, but
Yeah.
that's another story. So
Yeah,
with
I
this
know.
with
Everything's too violent for kids. It's insane.
apparently, but
Yeah.
for this one, it was just more of where if they didn't want her back, that's fine. But supposedly, I saw this theory online to where they're trying like supposedly word on the street is they're trying to figure out how to write the last Ronin and bring her back.
I saw that. Yeah, like they want her to be in it. And that would be, oh, I would geek. I would geek out.
That would
But
be
that's hilarious that she wouldn't come back for Secret of the Ooze because of violence. Then she'll come back for a rated R, super bloody and violent Ninja Turtles movie.
because maybe right now to where I haven't kept up with the latest of her projects of what she's doing, but I feel
Yeah,
like now as the fact she's more evolved, she's visiting more Comic Cons. I think what she's seeing now is the impact of the
yeah,
Ninja Turtles. So is
sure.
she? So I'm sure that she would know that if she were to come back to the Last Ronin, she knows who's going to show up. It's the millennials, it's the new generation, and especially with everything coming back on this, like Hollywood is capitalizing on nostalgia nowadays. What better way to jump onto that than coming back in the Last Ronin and just trying to go with that timeline?
Do you know who's trying to make that movie? Do you have any idea?
No,
Like,
nothing has been confirmed yet,
not a
but
studio or anything?
not as far as I know. Right now it's just being thrown around that it's being in development, but they're keeping this very, very secretive.
Sure.
So that is definitely something to look forward to in the meantime. But yeah, I really liked her interpretation of April, and then with everybody else that was just involved. I really liked it. I really liked all of the shots, the acting that they did, the action sequences, the humor, the writing, everything was thought out. And then here is, you know, before we get into the cultural impact of what TMNT did, let's also talk about the sabbatical that they had,
Sure.
where they go off into April's other residence, I believe. I think it was like a summer vacation home or something.
Yeah,
And
I assumed it was like a family like cabin or something.
I think so. And then right there is where we get a break away from the action. We get a break away from the humor. And here is where we get some human realism. She's reflecting about knowing more about these turtles more. And then we actually start to see more of their personality, of the way they're coping with Splinter and the possibility of his death. And seeing
Yep.
that it's as a kid, I didn't think he was gonna die, but the way that they're trying to message to where like it's a possibility, that's deep.
Yeah.
And the way April was drawing them out and the way their personalities were coming through afterwards, notice she didn't even draw Michelangelo.
Hmm.
And my friend and I were talking about this. We think that the only reason why she didn't draw Michelangelo is because we already know that he's the strongest one. And when he was punching the bag, he was getting very angry. And
Yeah.
if they filmed more of that, it would have got more darker. And then not only that, notice in the fight scenes when they're fighting each other, Michelangelo is fighting them blindfolded.
Yep.
And they can't, and none of his brothers lay a hand on him. They're unable to because he is that skilled. That scene, that sabbatical scene itself shows a lot that what people really care to see.
And it also feeds into like Casey and April having, kind of a love affair a little bit, like,
Absolutely, of course, yes.
yeah.
We'll definitely get into that part later. But this is also another thing where it ties to the Last Ronin. If those writers are able to connect with the writers of this movie and know like, hey, here is a little sample of what could turn into the Last Ronin, and they could use a flashback of that scene to show like this is where the origins of the Last Ronin started to cook.
Just
We saw
like,
that with him being blindfolded. None of his brothers could touch him. and then we see where Michelangelo's at now.
Yeah,
It
it would
leads.
be similar
It's
to.
a huge Easter egg moment.
I don't know if you watched Karate Kid Legends, but it would be cool to see it like that because at the very beginning of Karate Kid Legends, the first like 3 minutes are just a flashback to Karate Kid 2, I think.
Yes.
So,
I did see that movie. I did like some of the choices that they made of where they are merging the classic with the modern, and it works out well. Hopefully with the last Ronin that they'll do that with this one, and then that way because we see a lot of the realism here in that sabbatical, and that starts with the last Ronin being one, and then on top of that we also see the way each of the brothers are coping with not having Splinter around. We have Donatello being distracted. We have Leonardo being depressed. We have Raphael healing from the like physically. And then Michelangelo, we barely see his anger. We barely see his humor because it has to take something deep in order to affect Michelangelo.
yep.
That that is one that honestly, like I have a favorite shot, obviously, which of Shredder, but my favorite scene is that sabbatical because all of the human realism that you just notice and then it just resonates with you and then it could lead on to something more potential, something more grand. I ju- I really loved it.
Yep. All right, man. Well, hey, you said you have a good bit on cultural impact, so let's dive into that.
Oh yes. So the fact that I mean when you go to visit these Comic Cons for one, do you see where some of the actors that go there, do the autographs and the signups and headshots and all of that, they see how I went to like do you know NostalgiaCon?
Mm-mm.
So NostalgiaCon is a company that focused on basically nostalgia. They do Power Rangers, Pokemon, Digimon, Ninja Turtles, video games, Yu-Gi-Oh, the whole works. And
Sure.
anytime they travel, they always reach out to people that were affiliated with those franchises and of the content, voice actors, real actors, like all of the works. And so you see people where I dressed up as Michelangelo for one of those. Oh, I got lots of people wanting to take pictures with me because they loved Ninja Turtles. And that is not, even though there are a lot of media and animations that have made it just as good as amount of impact and should not be discredited at all, we cannot forget the impact that the Ninja Turtles has on millennials, on the future generations, and the fact that it has expanded into merchandise, video games, toys, more sequels, reboots, animated series. Ninja Turtles is definitely one that is going to withstand the test of time.
Agreed. I mean, you can put it up there with Ghostbusters, Batman, you can put it up there with anything really, and it may not be the best of those movies, but the cultural impact it has is right up there with all of them.
Absolutely. And here's what I say. I say that because when everyone thinks of superheroes, people think obviously of the Avengers. They think of the Justice League, and they all automatically think of that. But we forget that superheroes don't all wear those capes or fly. Some like there's even some where like Black Widow is considered is considered a superhero, and she's mostly combative. She has skills in martial arts, and she uses them exceedingly well. And yet, why are the Ninja Turtles called superheroes? They're the vigilantes. They fight bad guys. They're also in costumes. They're unusual, and they got their voices from the ooze, the like whatever the ooze gave them, it turned them into something very unusual. Here they are fighting bad guys, and in the comics they fight more bad guys, and Shredder's obviously like the main one. But why aren't they considered superheroes? They're just the same as everybody else. They're having to fight bad guys. They're having to fight the threats that is emerging onto society. And the same argument goes with the Power Rangers as well. They got costumes. They're good guys trying to fight bad guys. What is it? Is it because of the fact that both of those groups, they're teenagers? But teenagers can't be superheroes?
But the nerds know. I mean, you can play as the Ninja Turtles in the Injustice game, right? Like the nerds know they're superheroes, but the general populace just looks at them as a separate thing.
Yeah, because I mean, yes, Nickelodeon is mainly a youthful program. And then when it came to the Power Rangers, yes, it was mainly towards the kids as well. But they shouldn't be discredited if adults are wanting to watch it as well. I mean, I've got my peers where they're gonna watch Ninja Turtles no matter what
Mm,
because it shows how they stand up to par with Marvel and DC as well. At least in my books, they most certainly do.
sure, I
And
agree.
and so it shouldn't be a matter of where they came from or where they were made. It was the fact that if someone as if a group as the Ninja Turtles was able to have the almost the same amount of impact to where there was merchandise, video games, toys, lines were being said, people are dressing up as them, not even just on Halloween, but at Comic Con as well, then they deserve that status.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you're wrong in any way. I just think
No.
that's the reason why. But I mean, we even have a movie. We have Ninja Turtles versus Batman, and what's the difference between Batman and the Ninja Turtles? The Ninja Turtles were formed by something. Batman was just really rich and made himself into something. So I
Yes.
would argue they're more superheroes than he is. But at the end of the day, all that matters is hopefully people continue to watch Ninja Turtles, and they will, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
Batman is just basically this generation's self-made billionaire. That's literally what Batman is. And then with the Ninja Turtles, that's also the cultural impact when it came to the Ninja Turtles was brotherhood. That was a big
True.
theme that was
Yeah.
passing on to where you've got family, you've got reliability, you've got all of this growing up like name a like is that it's like that meme like name me a better squad, name me a better group. And then, of
Yeah.
course, you're gonna have some people are gonna say the Beatles. Some others are gonna say something as basic as the Avengers. And hell, there's gonna be some people that are gonna be like, okay, name me a better group than the Ninja Turtles. Progressive, the company. Like, there's gonna be different. There's gonna be different responses to that. Like, name me wrong answers only. But it comes to show that Ninja Turtles definitely are up there as well, and they definitely have quite a long lasting impact to where I think there is a TMNT day. If I'm not mistaken, there might be. I'll have to look into that. And then even to when one time where I was working with an organization, and this is where I was an entertainer, and it was superhero day. So some people dressed up as Superman. One person dressed as Superman, another one dressed up as Gwen Stacy, and I forgot who else. I dressed up as a Ninja Turtle. The debate people were having about that. I'm like, yo, they're Ninja Turtles. They fight bad guys. They're in costumes. They're very combative, and they're facing a threat. Tell me any other group that is different than that. Well, and then they were like, oh, because Superman has powers. Oh, Iron Man has powers as well. And I'm like, okay, there's Black Widow. Black Widow doesn't have powers. Batman, Batman just relies on his gadget and he relies in the shadows and the dark. What's different than Ninja Turtles? And then silence. Couldn't even do nothing. I heard it was like just for those quick couple of seconds, church mice, pins, crickets. I was like, I stunned y'all. That is what it is. So crazy. Okay, so now before we go into the fun facts, let's briefly talk about at least the little bit of a love story that happened with April and Casey. Now, the fact that is that classic where you have a prick who's very egocentric, cocky, and he thinks he's all that, and then you have what you would call what Destiny's Child would call an independent woman, like headstrong, like firm on her 2 feet, gets paid, does all of that, very headstrong, very straightforward, and they're like opposites. And yet here they are. They're the love story to where it wasn't too much, it wasn't very little, but as a kid, even I noticed. Okay, they're the only two guys. They're only two people around. They're going to be around each other for a while. Something's bound to happen,
Yeah,
and
you knew it. You knew it had to happen.
it was funny. I personally liked it because sometimes because they say opposites attract, and so obviously you see this opposite attract to where I wish we could have seen where that could have developed into the second film. Like, would at this point, would he have moved in with her? Would he have just showed up at her workplace with flowers and all of that? We could have seen something there to where Casey Jones could have helped out with the secret of the ooze. And
Yeah.
that was a storyline that could have been like if Casey Jones was in the second one, oh, the whole movie would have been different. Because
Yeah.
he would have helped to find Raphael. He would have gone around to that company to figure out where the flower or the dandelions and all that were. And then the love story between him and April, it would have been amplified more. I wish we would have seen that.
I agree. At least what it did give us, first of all, is that Casey's a badass and was in this movie. But secondly, the scene at their like getaway where he's massaging her shoulders and Michelangelo walks in and they're like, "You need any lotion?" He's like, "Nope," and he grabs turtle wax. Was so funny because it's just another product placement that just works perfectly.
Oh yeah, product placement with Domino's, with Turtle Wax. What are the product
Burger
placements that? What are the
Burger
product placements
King.
that they had? You said Burger King.
Yeah.
They had a few more. They had a few more as well.
Yeah.
But unless it's like overall, before we get into the fun facts, this whole movie, we agree. We wouldn't change a thing. We wouldn't add. We would add a couple of things just to amplify the greatness that it is. And overall, this movie is not going to go away, not at all.
Sure. Sure.
Like it's gonna be 40th anniversary, it's gonna be talked about again. And when the next movie comes out, Secret of the Ooze, we're gonna use this as the startup to where it's gonna lead us into this, and then see what changes we made and were they liked or were they not liked, and then that'll be something else. Who would have thought that 35 years later, none of them probably thought that this was going to stand within that long. The creators of it, the director, the actors, none of them knew what they were making at that point. And usually when you're making a film, when you're making a short film, when you're making a music video, even whoever is a content creator out there in the industry, you don't know in the present moment what you're gonna make. Is it gonna be trash? Is it gonna be just decent to look at? Or is it gonna be a masterpiece? Or is it gonna be something to where it's in between, to where we know it's not a masterpiece, but it's nostalgia. And that says a lot.
Yeah. It says a lot, right? That the in one weekend coming back with the anniversary, it's made over $3 million.
Man,
Like,
it really comes to show who was gonna come out to go see it in the movie, even though like I already have it. I have it on DVD.
so do I. Yeah.
So, but I'm still gonna pay to watch this movie in theater because there's nothing like a movie theater experience to where you have the bass, you're in the middle of the theater, and then it's like our own version of time travel. That little kid is immersed within you. You're seeing something that was created back then that lasted this long. And then thankfully nobody talked in the movie theater, so that was a good thing because I didn't ask for anybody else's commentary, but it was still fun like to just go back and then see the impact that it has made, which I am definitely going to be diving into here with fun facts and all of that. So, are you ready? Okay, so in addition, it says here that Judith Hope also did not reprise her role as April, also because of the 6 day shooting schedule that was inputted on her.
Hmm.
So I think what happened was that she only got one free day a week, and then she would just shoot 6 days. And usually, because I've been on set before, those hours are like 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
So you're spending 10 to 12 hours on set. You're getting your hair and makeup done. You go in to report like at 5 in the morning, try to get into character, go in the trailer, do all of that, say your lines, and then everything else has to be the lighting has to be set up, the boom. There's like workers on set, and then after you're done, you barely go home, barely eat, and then you got to wake up and do it all over again. I could see where for some people it could get frustrating. And I guess for her, I could see where she would get a little bit frustrated and probably just didn't want to come back to it.
Sure.
So, remember how I had Pizza Hut before? So it says here that Pizza Hut engaged in a $20 million marketing campaign that was tied into the film, despite the fact that Domino's Pizza was used as a product placement. So items
Hmm.
included were print, radio and television, and rebate coupons.
Okay.
And then Pizza Hut also sold a music album of the Ninja Turtles debut album coming out of our shelves.
Huh.
So at least with the fact that we know that Pizza Hut had their own product placement just by audio and then just by other placements.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And apparently, the Foot Clan is a parody of the Hand from the Daredevil comics.
Yes, I did know that. Yeah.
That is pretty. That's pretty interesting.
One of the coolest comics is Daredevil and Ninja Turtles like together.
I do agree with that. Oh, and then here are some deleted scenes that give the four turtles much more character development and it expanded more on April and Casey's romance. And it would have done the film into more context. So a few of these scenes include Casey Jones would have been introduced much earlier, watching the news report of the crime wave before getting into his hockey mask.
Okay.
That would have been a great introduction of Casey Jones, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then apparently the turtle wax joke was originally one of the relief after Michelangelo went through a severe depression where he destroys a punching bag and part of the barn's wall.
Hmm.
See, that was a deleted scene. I would have wanted to see that.
Yep.
Oh, I really wish we could have got that. And then a game of Ninja Hot Potato, where the turtles toss around an apple and the holder has to defend against the other three while taking a bite out of it. Do you remember when Raphael had that apple? He's like, gosh, I do hope there's more of them because because there was supposedly the deleted scene was right before the Foot Clan went in there. They were doing that training, and it was
Makes
Raphael's turn.
sense. That makes sense.
So so because otherwise, like if he was eating while he was fighting the Foot Clan, I was like, oh, this cocky mofo. I was like, nah, that doesn't seem like it. But but apparently that was just one of the few of the deleted scenes that would have given the Ninja Turtles more character development. Honestly, I wish that they had inputted this because I wanted to see. I wish I could see where that footage was at
Yeah.
because the only footage that I saw was never before seen behind the scenes of life on set at that time when my friend and I had walked into the movie theater, and it was
Mm.
so fascinating. And then here, remember how you had stated in the episode earlier about their weapons and how the controversy of people of parents, the Ninja Turtles using the weapons and then the lack of it. So, have you ever thought about why each turtle has a different weapon?
No, not really. I just always associated them with their weapon.
Just hear this out. Each of the Ninja Turtles' weapons reflect what Splinter thinks is their greatest weakness. So I'm gonna let you. Let's have some fun. You choose a turtle. Choose your first
Go
turtle.
go with Donatello.
All right, Donatello. We know him as the most intelligent and tech savvy of the turtles. So he's wielding a bow because it's a simple wooden staff. This is to teach him creativity and to make do with what he has and to adapt to that. All right, next turtle.
Let's go Raph.
Okay, Raph is the most hot-headed and the violent of the Ninja Turtles. So he ends up wielding a what I believe is called a scythe.
Sai. Yeah, they're
A
Sai.
scythe. So
Yep.
it's a traditional defensive weapon used in peacekeeping. This is to teach him patience and discipline. So now you have two more turtles to go. Pick your choice.
We're gonna end with the best one, so go Leonardo.
Okay. Leonardo is the most ethical and the most heroic of the turtles. So he wields katanas, which are the only bladed weapon of the four and the most lethal by default. This is to teach him that ultimately, despite his ideals, he may be forced to take lives in order to protect people and must never fight battles needlessly. Now let's end it with Michelangelo.
Let's do it.
Mi- Michelangelo is the most scattered brain and the playful of the turtles. So he wields the nunchucks, which is a weapon that's infamous for its complexity and ease of injuring the user. So because he's scatterbrained, this is to teach him focus and not to take combat lightly.
Because he can hit himself.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I've really never thought about it that way at all. But yeah, I think that's about all the time we have today. So, Chris, thanks so much for coming on. This has been the Real Friends Podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yo, next time.